March 14, 2012, my son Thomas lost his battle with the disease of addiction. I now belong to a club that no parent should ever belong to. Do you know the signs? Do you know the trends that children are doing in today's world? Do you know the signs and symptoms? Do you know the signs and symptoms of drug abuse? I want to empower and educate Long Islanders by bringing a force of professionals and how to prevent the disease of addiction. Long Island in Crisis. Good evening and welcome to Long Island in Crisis. This show is dedicated to people that are struggling with the disease of addiction, people who have lost their battle, and the family members that are swept up in the insanity of the disease. I lost my son on March 14, 2012, so we just need to bring awareness. We need to educate and empower people to take their lives back. And there's still a lot of hope in recovery. Recovery is possible, but you know, anything worth fighting for and working for is achievable. Very Merry Christmas this week to everyone, and tonight I have a really special guest, Dr. Jeff Reynolds.
Hey, Linda.
You were the first guest, and now we're going to finish out the year,
Yeah.
and it's so great to have you here.
I'm glad to be here. It feels like it's been a while, but you've had some awesome guests. Every week I see them posted up, and really, really
It's
impressive.
been amazing.
Yeah.
It really has. And I've gotten emails from Ireland and different places around the world.
Awesome.
And it's making an impact.
Yeah, it's all about reaching out to others. So
I've
doing
had
that.
kids reach out and say, can you please find me help?
Yeah.
It's incredible. So that, you know what, change one person, you
worth
feel
it,
great.
right?
Oh man, that's for sure. Just got to
great.
change the direction.
Absolutely.
So right before we started, we were talking about the babies. Babies being
Yeah.
born dependent on opiates.
Yeah, which, look, it shouldn't be surprising to any of us that as this
No.
problem gets worse and worse and worse, eventually it's going to touch every single population. And, you know, out of the crisis, we've seen some new issues emerge. And this issue
And
of...
that breaks my heart to
Yeah,
watch.
you know, I think it's tough. And, you know, when you think about women and children, it's always been a key deficiency in our treatment system. You know, if you're a mom with an infant or a mom with a baby, where do you go to treatment? There are a couple facilities, but they're far and few between. And so if you're a mom who winds up pregnant, pregnancy can be a wonderful opportunity to make some changes in your life. Not only for
Absolutely.
you, but for your baby. But imagine you're 6, 7, 8, 9 months pregnant and unsure as to what to do. If
Yeah.
you go into treatment, very often you won't be accepted because you're pregnant and it's potentially a high-risk pregnancy. You know that if you test positive on a tox screen in the hospital that you're going to potentially have a problem with Child Protective Services. And we see moms all the time who are using substances, postpone getting prenatal care, which
Yes.
is the worst thing in the world, and try to kind of go undercover as opposed to, you know, coming forward and getting help. And when they do try to get help, very often it's not very available. And so that's been a persistent issue. If you think back to the 1980s, it was an issue with babies born to crack-addicted moms.
Yeah.
And now we've come full circle. And ironically, though not surprisingly, the system didn't change in the mid-1980s. Like, nobody said, hey, we should really begin to deal with moms who are pregnant, or parenting moms for that matter.
Absolutely.
And so even moms with toddlers, you know, certainly pregnancy is a key life change. And when you look at the incidence of postpartum depression, and you look at all of the other things that new moms have to deal with, the fact that there's an uptick in substance use disorders is not atypical or surprising, yet the system isn't geared to deal with pregnant or parenting women. It's designed to deal with single men still. And this is proof of that. And so
I think that girls, and especially young women, go undetected longer.
Yeah.
Because as parents, you deal with boys different than you deal with girls.
Absolutely.
So I think that fathers, especially fathers,
Yep.
will be less apt to take a harder stance with the daughter.
As a father, I'd say that's probably
Yeah.
true.
So that I think that the
Yep.
treatment will, you know, will be later on in the disease,
Yeah.
as opposed to dealing with boys.
which is really a missed opportunity. You know, legislator Bill Spencer, who's a physician, did a hearing, I guess, 2 weeks or so ago.
Is he from Centerport?
He is.
Yeah.
He is. And chairs the health committee. He did a hearing, and a number of us testified. But a representative, Dennis Novak from Child Protective Services, testified, and he testified about the huge upswing in addicted moms and cases that they're having. And so, you know, a case being handed over to CPS is not ideal for anyone, including the county, who's spending millions upon millions of dollars providing services to these families. But it's also pretty traumatic for the entire family unit, for that mom, for that child. And there's aside from there not being a lot of prenatal care, there's very little care for these kids once they are born to moms who are struggling. And so mom cleans up her problem with some help and treatment. That child, that toddler, should be followed and screened on and off throughout the lifespan. You know, we know that kids that are born to addicted parents are at increased risk for developing addiction themselves. Putting aside the biological stuff that happens when a mom is
hopefully
continually
there's not
right.
mental issues,
right.
physical issues,
right.
all of those other things.
Yet there's no good follow-up care. Like, this should be a seamless system. Doctors should be having really thorough and probing conversations with pregnant women about their use of drugs and alcohol. You should have those conversations several times and create a safe space to have that conversation with her. When a mom does test positive or discloses substance use, she ought to be able to go directly into treatment with or without her baby. And then there ought to be services for her after the baby's born, both substance use services as well as mental health services to deal with depression.
And
none of that's in place.
Supportive services, because
yeah.
if you create
yeah.
the space and you lift them up, they're going to acclimate back into society
yeah.
much faster than just letting them drop and expecting them to figure everything out.
Absolutely.
It's, you know, it's like telling a dementia patient, why aren't you remembering to take your medication?
Right, right. That's exactly
because
it.
I have a disease, because I can't remember. So
yeah.
you're letting people with a disease that you know, that's all they can think
muddle
about.
through on their own. And it's,
yeah.
you know, so it's another reminder that this crisis has put a giant spotlight on all the deficiencies that have been around forever, but now are worse because there's so many more people that are struggling. And so, you know, the hope is, just as pregnancy is an opportunity for a woman to make some changes in her life, we're hoping that this crisis provides an opportunity around care for pregnant women, and perhaps things get better going forward.
You don't know the problem just with women who are in the throes of addiction. They're usually trading sex for
yeah.
drugs and money.
Yeah.
So that's a problem.
That's absolutely true. And, you know, it's one of the things that families don't like to talk about. And it's one of the things that gets swept under. You know, it's not typically termed as sex work. It's typically my boyfriend, my dealer, whatever else. And
yeah.
that's a very, very real component. You know, I think about now the incredible number of young people who have turned to injecting heroin as opposed to snorting it. And these are kids that were not alive during the heyday of the AIDS crisis. Know very little about it. And so you mention, you know, needle sharing behaviors, unsafe sexual behaviors. They didn't get the same education that folks in their 20s and 30s,
yeah.
you know, did. And so,
that
you know,
was a frightening time.
Yeah, and we've actually got to step back and say, all right, so what do we need to do to keep these young people safe? Yes, we want to move them along and continue them towards recovery, but in the meantime, what kind of information can we give them to keep them safe around not sharing needles, about unprotected sex, that kind of thing?
All of those things,
yeah.
because all those diseases, we're seeing an increase in all of those things.
Across the board.
Across
right. the board. You know, this is a time in New York State where we've actually made some headway in addressing the AIDS crisis. The governor has laid out a plan to completely end the crisis by 2020. But that only happens if we address this brand new cohort of substance users. If we don't, the numbers will be back bigger and badder than ever before.
Do you think those safe spaces that they're creating now to actually use drugs,
you know,
it
worries me a little bit. You know,
I have no comment on that.
And look,
it's mind-boggling.
I'm a big fan of needle exchange programs,
yes.
right? And so the syringe exchange programs have been found to be effective, to work, to reduce the likelihood of transmission. Some have said, well, this is exactly the same. It doesn't feel exactly the same.
Right.
You know, bring folks into a room and say, okay, I'm going to watch you shoot up. You know, there's something about it that
that's wrong.
Is disconcerting,
yeah.
right? It doesn't feel right. So, you know, I think there's a line where some stuff might be effective and going to the extreme might not be such a great idea, quite frankly.
Yeah.
And so I can't ever envision that happening here on Long Island. Even in New York City, it's pretty controversial. You know, it seems like
It's
fraught
still
with
illegal.
problems to me. Yeah, it's still an illegal activity. You know, there are ways to educate people around safer use without sitting there and watching them and really condoning their substance use. By no means do we want to drive people into back alleys where they do it in secrecy, but, you know, bringing them into a room and say, sure, shoot up, to me just feels like it goes a little bit too far.
I think that people are, you know, it's so rampant. So people
Yeah.
are using all over the place
Yeah.
anyway.
Right.
You know, not surprising if you're in a public bathroom and somebody's in a stall. It's happening.
Right.
It's happening everywhere.
Right.
So to have a special place to go,
Yeah.
it just
Well, and on Long Island, who's going to want that in their neighborhood?
nobody.
Right? We don't even want affordable housing in our communities.
Right,
Can you imagine?
right.
You know, a supervised injection site.
Yeah.
Right. Just not going to happen.
Not going to happen. Not going to happen. And that would just be a whole nother level of denial anyway.
Yeah. You know, in a sense, to me, it feels like almost acceptance. You know, it feels like saying, well, this is inevitable. It is what it is. You're going to shoot drugs.
It's like giving up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think there's a line where it's effective versus ineffective and goes too far. And I think giving people access to clean syringes is fine. I think educating them about safer syringe use is fine.
Well, Hep C will be, hepatitis C will
Absolutely.
be on the rise, you know, again. And that was really under control. So we have a
Yeah.
lot of very serious diseases.
Absolutely.
So never mind people if they don't have insurance. So if they're, you know,
Right.
this is all comes on the backs of all New York State taxpayers, all United States
Right.
taxpayers, really.
Right. Oh,
It's
absolutely.
all going to be Medicaid funded.
Medicaid is the single biggest expenditure here in New York State and probably nationwide. And when you look at the health of folks with substance use disorders, typically you're not going to the doctor on a regular basis. You're typically malnourished because
Yes.
of what you're involved in. You know, any number of potential health complications directly related to substance use, but then also indirectly related to that use.
Well, once you get the substance use under control, typically you're might have mental
Yeah.
health issues arise in probably more cases than not.
Yeah.
So there's so many components to the disease.
Yeah.
So how do we change this?
You know, I think we made progress
Freight
this
train
year. You
that
know, when I
we're
think
on.
about 2015, I think we made some progress. I don't think that we've turned a corner by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, if you look at all the data, it's getting worse. But I think there's a couple areas that we've made progress in. One is, you know, the distribution of Narcan and the understanding of what an
Yes.
overdose looks like and the importance of calling for help. And I think a lot of that has taken hold, and I think it's been very productive
Samaritan
and very
law.
useful. Yeah. So I think, you know, there's more general public acceptance of that. I think the other thing is that this has become so widespread that everybody now knows somebody.
Yeah.
And so although the stigma persists, I think, you know, in a lot of ways, this has been the great equalizer.
Yeah.
And addiction has never been more front and center than it has now. You have presidential candidates, some of whom we might disagree with on everything else, but a presidential candidate sharing personal experiences and talking about this issue in terms of the top 5 issues the country's dealing with. I think that's a step in the right direction. I wish it didn't have to get this bad in order for it to rise to the surface. But I do think we've made some progress in general awareness and understanding.
Because it's still amazing to me that the rate at which we're losing people, and especially this young generation,
Yeah.
that there's not an outcry and an absolute, you know, so much more going on.
Yeah,
If it was any other disease, people would be up in arms.
absolutely.
So why is it that, you know, it gets swept under the rug like that? Why isn't there more of an outcry?
You know, I think part of it is that many families, when they've walked this road, are so battered and beaten
Yeah.
down. So yeah, the shame is part of it. You know, we did a press conference yesterday with Senator Schumer, and it was at Cohen Children's Hospital, which was so festive for, you know, kids. And you saw families leaving, obviously, with children that had significant issues. And if there's anything that gets you around the holidays, it's sick kids in the holidays and that kind of thing. But I thought about, you know, the number of young people who are entering treatment today or leaving treatment today. And, you know, are there balloons and holiday decorations and a loving family waiting outside those treatment facilities or ushering them in? In a lot of cases, there aren't, because those families have been so torn apart by the disease itself. And so You know, I think the shame and stigma is part of it, but also these are families that have been on a rapidly spinning roller coaster
it's a complete
for
insanity.
years. And
Yeah.
so, you know, you go off to treatment and, you know, I think it's the first time families get a chance to catch their breath.
They breathe.
Right?
They breathe and they can sleep without having to worry about where their loved one really is.
For a period of time, right? So with
Yeah.
most conditions, a doctor can say with some certainty, I think the prognosis is good, probably not going to come back, or the prognosis isn't that great. And it's never perfect, but they can give you a pretty good idea. This kind of thing, it's really hard to predict what's going to happen. And we know that this is a chronic relapsing condition. And, you know, we try to educate families to that. What that means in their mind is, so this never ends?
Yeah.
You know, and for some families, it doesn't.
For some families, it doesn't. We'll be right back after this message.
Welcome to Formula Auto Wash, where every day is a great day for a car wash. Open 7 days a week from 8 a.m. till 5:30 p.m. Sundays 8 a.m. till 4 p.m. Detailing packages for every budget, starting out at $29.99. 100% hand wash and detail centre. Horsehair and microfiber brushes and mitts. Proudly using Ecolab Blue Coral soaps and waxes. Formula Auto Wash has served the community for over 30 years. Senior discounts all day, every day. Ladies' Day Wednesday, $3 off any wash. Early bird discount Monday through Thursday till 9:30 a.m. Check out our website, formulaautowash.com.
Welcome back to Long Island in Crisis. My special guest, Jeff Reynolds, and so many things to talk about.
Yeah.
Addicted babies, or babies born dependent on opiates. Needle exchange. How do we get through the holidays? You know, just like what you said, is there a loving family waiting for a young person or any person coming out of, you know, treatment facilities? Because oftentimes that person has done some damage to their family.
Yeah, Yeah.
You know, and understandably, the family is angry and the family is upset, but the family should also be in some kind of treatment because they need to
Absolutely.
have a toolkit so they know how to deal with their person dealing with.
Yep.
But talking about the holidays and where every place you go is festive and alcohol is typically involved.
Yeah.
So
It's
how
a
do you
tough
deal
time of
with
year.
it?
You know, I
It
think it's
is.
a tough time of year for people, particularly those early in recovery. It's a tough time
Yeah.
for families. It's the time when families get together. So whether it's, you know, extended family now all in the same room crowded around a table filled with alcohol, or kids coming home from college.
Yeah.
It's usually the place where families begin to pick up on the fact that there's a problem or that problem is on full display. You know, I think the holidays can be a really stressful time for most families, whether it's, you know, the shopping or the getting together or the fighting traffic to get places. So you take a whole bunch of stress, you take
It's a lot
whole
of
bunch
grief
of
during the
alcohol.
holidays too.
Absolutely.
People get very, very depressed. You know,
Well, and I think I think most families look and say, all right, this is what I envisioned Christmas Day would look like in my mind, but it's really, really different than that,
Yeah,
right? It doesn't
yeah.
feel, and we come up with this ideal that perhaps you see on a movie, but isn't real life. And
But
then
isn't real
it's
life.
the disconnect, and people
Yeah.
look at it and say, you know, here's where my life is, here's what I think it should be, and, you know, who's standing in the way of that. So I think it's a tough time. The alcohol use goes through the roof. You know, any
Yeah.
liquor store will tell you they do, you know, 75% of their sales
oh my gosh,
over the
from
course of 2
Thanksgiving
weeks.
to, that they make their year.
And
right
so,
now.
and look, that's how people socialize. They feel more comfortable, and so, you know, it's a rough combination. You know, family strife, accumulated stress, alcohol, and then most people drink during the holidays. Most people eat during the holidays,
Yeah.
and say January 1, it all changes.
Going to the gym every day.
You know, so it's one of those psychological kind of markers we put in place to say, so if I want to make changes, I pick a date and I make those changes. And look, that can be very useful, right? So when people want to try to stop smoking, there's a process they go through. They begin to tell other people they're going to quit. They
Yes.
begin to set a date. They begin to wind down the pack of cigarettes they have. You know, addiction is no different. People will
Yeah.
begin to make plans. And I think families will begin to say, geez, after the holidays, we need to really confront him. We need to have a conversation. We need to get this fixed. So January, you see a big uptick in treatment admissions,
Yeah.
the same way you see more people at the gym than ever before.
Yeah.
Problem is, that all wears off come February 1st.
Yeah, but
And so-
usually January 15th.
Right. Yeah, it's not sustainable. And
Yeah.
so I think it's a very useful point in time for many people, but it's somewhat artificial.
Yeah.
You know, these are conversations that you can have at any period of time. I think for homes that have struggled with the use of drugs and alcohol, this is a real key time, and it might be the first time families say, you know, look, we're not going to drink, you know, this Christmas Eve, or we're not going to have drinks with dinner, that kind of thing, and really begin to set up some new models of thinking, some new ways of being, to say, you know what, we always drank a lot around the holidays this year. We're not going to do that, and let's see how it goes.
Let's see how we feel.
Yeah.
Number one,
Yeah.
you're gonna feel better. And you know, we talk about toddlers and babies, and I challenge people just to think outside the box. A 1-year-old can swipe your iPhone, can swipe a tablet, can work a tablet. A 1-year-old. If you don't think that they're taking in the atmosphere that they're in,
Sure.
and noticing that every adult drinks from a certain type of bottle, they're
Yep.
picking up on those signs at a very early age.
Yep.
And when they turn 8, 9, 10, they're saying, well, if I'm going to have fun,
Right.
I have to do this too. Because that's when my family has fun. That's
Yep.
when I really see everybody laughing and acting silly and acting stupid. So we need to set a better example.
Yeah.
And it's just being cognizant of everything, really. Kids
Yeah.
today are smarter than we were. They
Absolutely.
are. They're much more technology. You know, they're aware of everything.
Yeah, but you know, in some ways, the drunk driving campaigns are really important around the holidays. But it almost says to people, you know, don't drink and drive, but sit home and get smashed. You know, maybe we need to kind of refine the message and say, look, you know, alcohol is not the best thing in the world for you.
Right.
You know, it tears up families. It has a big impact. However, if you're going to drink, don't drive. But I think we should do a better job kind of saying up front, you know, look, you can enjoy the holidays without the use of alcohol. we spend a lot of time educating people about, so what do you say when somebody kind of hassles you because you're not drinking? And there's two schools of thought. Some folks will say, well, walk around with a cup so it looks like you're drinking. That's not my mindset. My mindset is, if you're not drinking, say to people, yeah, I'm not drinking tonight. Because the more we do that, the more we begin to make that the norm, as opposed to having to hide and make an excuse about why you're not drinking. That's craziness. Right?
It is crazy, but I think for yourself, why do you need to, do you really need that drink to be social? And and only you can ask yourself those questions.
Right.
What's holding you back from being yourself?
And if you're always using alcohol when you're socializing, at some point do you lose the ability to really socialize?
Right.
Right? Because holding a conversation is a skill, right? Unless you practice
it
regularly, you're not good at it. So the holidays, real key point, lots of family stress around this. But again, I always think about things in terms of opportunities. It's an opportunity to families to really see what's going on and then begin to change up the script a little bit, to say, look, we're not going to drink with Christmas dinner. Or there's the family member who everybody kind of chuckles about because he gets drunk and wanders out into the backyard. Maybe that's the time to have a conversation with that person, but also to educate the kids around, to say, look, Uncle Paul walking around in the backyard without a shirt on, it's not funny.
It's not funny.
He's someone who's very, very sick, and this is making fun of him, and it's not right. And so, great opportunity to do some education around these issues.
Yeah, and I think it's so important to share with your kids. They're never that young. You always think your children are, well, they're only 10, they're babies. But they're not. They're so smart.
And they're
so in
soaking
tune.
so many things in that unless you unwind those messages, they're left with those messages.
Yeah.
Right, so they see you come home at night and say, oh, what a day, I need a drink. What's the message? If you have a lousy day, have a drink and it all goes away. They see the guy who's the life of the party drunk. Well, it looks fun when you drink.
Right.
Right. They don't see, and we protect them from the horrors of alcoholism or impaired driving or whatever else.
But if you came home and said, I had a horrible day, let's go for a walk. I need to walk this off.
Right.
Because that's just a new way to look at things. Let's get out of here. You know what? Let's, go to there's so many indoor parks now that you could take your family to and burn. That's having fun. Yeah, that's getting rid of stress and eliminating yourself from the thought processes of the day.
Absolutely.
Or just chilling at home. Play a game with your kids. Sit down and be aware for them.
Parents always think, I've heard a lot of parents say, so where do you go to learn how to be a parent? And there is some truth to that. And that
a lot of truth to that.
We don't, even well-educated folks are unsure as to whether or not they're doing the right thing. You bring a baby home and you rely on your peers or your own experience from your parents, which may or may not be very good.
Yeah.
And other than that, you're kind of winging it based on intuition. But I always say to parents, it's actually not that complicated, right? So there's no science to it. Part of it's intuition. There's some tips that you can get. But by and large, having a conversation and being a good parent, it should, in a lot of cases, come pretty naturally. It's not rocket science. There's no, obscure formula.
And it's okay to tell them that you made a mistake.
Right. It's okay to not get it right.
It's okay not to get it right. It's always okay. Because that's how they'll learn that it's okay. Because our kids are under so much stress that if they knew it was okay, that not everything is perfect, not everything is worked out, and tomorrow's going to come anyway, and you worry about it then. Not everything has to be solved. It's not going to get solved in a 30-minute sitcom.
That's right. And, I think kids today have more stress than ever before.
Yeah.
They have a lot of technology and things that we didn't have, but the stresses are pretty high.
Yeah.
And so that pressure to perform around Common Core, parents feel that same pressure too. That pressure's coming at the time when schools have fewer social work and counseling resources than ever before because they are teaching to a test.
And fewer arts.
Right.
And music and gym.
Right. So the kids are less able to express themselves, less able to blow off steam through physical exercise, chronically overscheduled, and they're told perform, 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 otherwise your teacher is going to be fired. It puts a lot of pressure on kids.
A lot of pressure.
And on parents for that matter.
And so on parents.
I know of a lot of parents who have had a lot of tears around the dinner table trying to do Common Core math. Which, look, there's something to be said for raising the standards, and I'm all for that, but you got to make sure that you're supporting kids and parents and doing this at the same time.
Absolutely.
And that you're not causing more damage. You know, in the name of academic success, are you causing emotional damage in the process? And that doesn't serve kids in the long run either.
No, it doesn't. It just creates so much anxiety for them.
Right.
And learning shouldn't be anxiety-ridden.
Right.
It should be fun.
Right.
On some level, we have to just break it down a different way for them. We'll be right back after this message.
Hi, I'm Tom Mealy, one of the founders here at Madhousetv. You know, people ask me all the time what motivates me and what makes Madhousetv different than all the other internet broadcasting studios around the world. Well, I tell you, what motivates me are the people we get to meet, the people we get to help, and the lives that we change by allowing their medium here at the studio. And I think that that's what my motivation is. What makes us different? Madhousetv has been around for the past 5 years. We have a solid foundation. We've seen studios come and go. We've seen studios in basements, garages, shacks, little shanties all over the place. People wanting to do this type of media. This is the media of the future. So what makes us different? Here at Madhousetv, our team, Tommy Marr, Vicky, Janine, we take this very seriously. This is not a joke. This is a very serious business. And to be serious, you need to spend money. And to need to spend money, you have to have the best equipment possible to make the best video and the best broadcast possible. And here at Madhousetv, that's exactly what we strive to do. We got a strong foundation. We're going to be around for a long time. You know, they look at me every once in a while when I come up with an idea and they say, oh boy, here we go again. But you know what? It's that, oh boy, here we go again, that keeps us the best. And we will continue to strive forward to do whatever it takes to be the best internet broadcasting studio in America. And I got to be honest with you folks, we're on that path. Over the past several years, we have had some of the top entertainers here in this studio. We've had lunch with people like The Who. We've had people in here like George Thorogood's Destroyers. Tommy Marr has been inspirational in bringing some of the biggest talent in the world right here to the studio. You know, that's what it's all about. Once you're the biggest, once you're the best, they're going to come. So we're offering all of you out there who want to have a shot at media, want to have a shot at being on television, give us a call here at Madhousetv. We'd love to talk to you. Our prices are unbelievably reasonable. This is not CBS. We never planned to be CBS. So if you want to be on TV, you want to get your message across, you have a non-for-profit that you got to get that message out to people of hope, give us a call at 631-882-6900. We're here to help. We're here to have a good time. And most of all, we're here to become the best and the biggest in this business. Thanks so much.
Welcome back to Long Island in Crisis. So we were just talking, Jeff, about Common Core. Your daughter's 10.
Yeah.
And, you know, they are performing on a much higher level. Is that good for kids? Is that bad for kids? You know, a few years from now, I think we're going to find out that maybe we took the bar from here to here and we forgot a few rungs in between.
Yeah, it might be too fast. I'm all for raising standards and that kind of thing.
Without a doubt. We have to be competitive in
Yeah,
the world.
that's exactly it. But, you know, not all kids are going to progress at the same level, especially as they're younger. And, you know, what's the trade-off in the process? You know,
Right.
for every minute we spend on math and not on something else, you know, is there a trade-off in the process? And I think
And
there might
anytime
be.
homework leads to tears
Right.
or frustration, it's not a good
Right.
night. Then,
Yeah,
then we
so-
don't like school anymore.
Right. And we don't like learning. Like, we want kids, I think, to really be hungry to learn new things and feel
Absolutely.
satisfied with the
Yes.
outcome and, you know, being able to do well. But I think, you know, if we go to the extreme, it becomes a miserable experience and
Yeah.
they begin to shun it. And that's, you know, so if you do that now when kids are 10, 11, 12, what happens when you have 14 and 15 and 16-year-olds, right? Look out.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, we know that,
Right.
you know, most people, you know, in all the facilities, when I go to talk to people in treatment, and I ask them, what age would you be if you wanted to go back and talk to yourself not to start using drugs? overwhelmingly, it's 12.
Yeah.
Some 10, some 13, but overwhelming. So what happens in that 10, 11, 12 that is causing this
That jump into
at
middle school.
such an alarming rate?
It's a jump into middle school.
Yeah.
And, I think it's such, for most kids, a startling change, right? Where you leave one peer group and really it's a coming of age. And it's a big leap, where kids are stepping off a giant curb.
Well, they go from elementary school, really,
Right.
one class, to now you're going to 3 different classes. And have you been prepared for that?
Right. You've gone from being really a baby and coddled and whatever else to, all right, big time now, all in one jump.
All in one jump
At the same
with
time,
no
your
preparation.
brain development is at a really critical point, right? So your hormones are raging, whether you're a boy or a girl. You couldn't feel lousier about yourself if you tried. Your brain is developing at a very rapid pace. It's the point in time where your parents and schools begin saying to you, okay, the grades really matter now in terms of your future. It's a very, very difficult combination.
And you're 12 with 14, 15-year-olds.
Right.
So you're looking at another peer group who's probably calling you all different names,
Absolutely.
which is a rite of passage.
Right.
When you're the oldest in the school to the youngest in the school. That's just kids really being kids. But kids are cruel.
Absolutely.
So you hear all of those things and the need to fit in and the need to be popular and the need for all of these things to happen. And you're scared to death.
And then a kid says to you, hey, you want to try a cigarette, you want to try an energy drink, you want to smoke a joint. And look, you want to fit in, right? So lo and behold, you're the 1 in 10 who's predisposed to addiction, and the cigarette leads to energy drinks, which leads to, in a lot of cases, marijuana or prescription pills or something else. And if you're a kid who suffers from ADHD, which in some cases is, a diagnosis that's stuck on every kid, particularly when parents want their kid to perform. Look, the surest way to become the most popular kid in school is to share your ADHD meds with the other kids. And so, it starts very quickly and then takes off from there. And we know that when kids begin to manipulate their brain chemistry, that accelerates. That doesn't necessarily go away. Then a certain percentage of kids, they're essentially rewiring their brains to always need a substance to feel those feelings, to feel those highs, or not to feel. Then their natural ability to do so is lost over a period of time. And so if you start doing this when you're 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, by the time you're 16 or 17, you've spent a long time doing this. Your brain has been, quite frankly, hijacked by the substances.
Yeah.
And it takes a while to reprogram that. You can, make no mistake about it, it's possible, but it takes time and effort. At the same time, you're still trying to complete school.
Yeah, but you're also 17, 18, 19. If you started using substances when you were 12, your emotional IQ is 12.
Right. Your development, for all intents and purposes, stopped.
So you have an adult, in a very adult body, thinking like a 12-year-old.
Yep.
And being legally able to make your own decisions.
Right.
Whereby, that's why we have so many problems now with kids being revived by Narcan and leaving the hospital, going right back out and doing what they're doing, because you can't even have a conversation with them. A parent isn't even entitled to know why they're in the emergency room.
It's gone too far.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things, my hope is that the legislature this year will do a 72-hour hold bill or something along those lines.
We're working on that.
If you're revived with Narcan and someone's administering Narcan and pounding on your chest to bring you back to life, you ought to suffer the inconvenience of sitting somewhere for 72 hours to get some clarity about you, to get your wits about you, to give your family time to figure out what move they want to make next. You shouldn't be streeted in 20 minutes. Every time I see that happen, it's a missed opportunity. And we know that when kids suffer a non-fatal overdose, they're at exponentially higher risk for fatal overdose. So I know of a number of cases where someone has had non-fatal overdoses, 2 or 3 of them, only to be successful, the next time. And so it's a huge missed opportunity. We say, if you're a danger to yourself or others, there's a psychiatric law that will allow you to be held. We draw a distinction for some weird reason between mental health law and substance use law. And so, you know, these folks, you know, anybody would look at them and say, if you're shooting 10 bags of heroin a day and have suffered a non-fatal overdose, you are a danger to yourself
Yeah.
and others. There's no doubt about it.
There's no doubt about it.
You know, talk to the moms who lose kids that are killed in car wrecks. You're a danger to yourself and other people.
Absolutely.
And so,
But all you have to do is say to the doctor, so you're going to would you like him to drive your family home tonight then?
right,
That, you know,
right.
I would turn the tables a little
You
bit.
know what? You know what happens though? Families, and maybe you can relate to this. Families, in some ways, when doctors and medical professionals make it out to be less serious than it really is, it's like any other condition, right? So the doctor, look, I'm always relieved when a doctor says to me, "You don't have to stay in the hospital," or "My kids don't have to stay in the hospital." So when a doctor says, "No, you're all right. You can go home," you're not prone to say, particularly with addiction, "Wait, I think he's really sick. I want him to stay here." You look
Yeah.
at it and say, and look, the kid's telling you, this isn't a big deal, you just misunderstood. A doctor says, yeah, he can go home, and you kind of get roped into the conspiracy
Yeah,
of believing
you do.
it's
Yep.
not serious. And you're relieved to say, well, I guess if it were really that bad, they'd be keeping him. They're not. So you feel a little bit of relief in all of that. So the ambivalence the kid feels.
If you're not educated on
Right.
the disease, you will
Right.
you will definitely feel that.
Or look, even if you're educated, you're so wound up in the
Yeah.
emotion of it. Look, I
it's-
know really smart people that get trapped in this thing.
Oh,
You know, who will look
absolutely.
and say, you know, years later, I don't know what in God's name I was thinking.
Yeah.
You know, I talked to a parent within the past couple of days who actually used to drive her daughter around to score heroin. And, you know, we talked that through as she was doing it, and she'd say, well, I don't want her sick. I don't want her selling herself. I don't want her doing all those things. You know, the daughter's in recovery now, and she's a couple of years beyond that, and she will say, I can't believe the places that I drove her and the things I did. In the height of this, I was, in a sense, as sick as she was.
Yeah.
You know, I'm driving around to get my daughter heroin. Who would ever think?
Who would ever do that?
And you wind
Right.
up in this situation, and I think families do
You-
things they wouldn't otherwise do.
Without it, and there's no judgment on those families. You do the best you can in the moment that you're in.
That's right.
And
That's right.
that's all anyone can ever expect.
That's right.
If 2 months, 5 months, 3 years, you can look back. Yeah, well, you're in a whole different world.
Right. It was craziness, right? You were on a roller coaster, and you did what it took to
But
survive the roller
you did
coaster.
the best you could.
Yep.
You know, our friend Kim Lauby, when she's been on, and unbelievable with prevention,
Yeah.
she does such a great job. But when she told me that really addiction is an adolescent disease, I was like, you know, ding, the bell goes off.
And how many pediatricians know anything about it?
They-
Right? So
they're not even-
Right. They know nothing about it.
Nothing.
So, you know, your kid has a significant brain disease. And probably, so if you line up the potentially fatal conditions, addiction's at the top for adolescents.
Without a doubt.
Yet if you talk to the average pediatrician or even the average general practitioner and say, so what do you know about addiction? You're really nothing.
Nothing.
You know, it's the #1 killer of kids. Yet our medical professionals know little about it. Families are living in secrecy, you know. So schools are by no means equipped to deal with it. You know, teachers will tell me all the time, I don't have the time, I don't have the know-how, I'm not sure what to do. So the #1 killer of kids, we're very ill-equipped to deal with the crisis. And that's part of what got us here.
Yeah. So, well, I'm hoping, you know, actually had a meeting with Oasis last week, Office of Alcohol and Substance Abuse, and they are putting forth, Dr. Morgan, who's the medical director there, is putting out a physician's education that is not mandated. So we'll see how the doctors handle this, because if it's not mandated and they don't go, there's not going to be a lot, that we'll have a little bit more leverage to get a bill passed.
Yeah. Look, I think it ought to be mandatory. There is no
It is,
question.
it should be.
You know, without a doubt, this ought to be mandated, particularly if you're prescribing opioids or
Oh, my
psychotropic
goodness,
medications.
absolutely.
It's craziness that this isn't mandated, and quite frankly, the medical society should be ashamed of itself for pushing back on this. You know, I think all healthcare practitioners take an oath to first do no harm, and we know that some of them are doing harm, not because they're doing criminal things, but because they don't understand the facts. They don't have the skills to have the conversations that should be had. You know, again, if there were any other condition that were wiping people out, you know, left and right,
That's
they'd be
just
clamoring
it.
to go to a class. Let's, you know, say Ebola took hold in the United States, they'd be clamoring for information and help on how to deal with patients. They should be doing the same here.
Without a doubt, it's not a choice.
Right.
When that person is stricken with that disease, it no longer becomes a choice. They made one bad choice by picking
Right.
up a substance at a
Right.
young age.
Right.
That's the one bad choice they made. Continuing that choice is not a choice anymore.
That's right.
They are hijacked, they're kidnapped, they're all of those things.
Yeah.
And we need to educate. My son, my younger son, was in the hospital for 6 days with a bad back injury. I identified our family as having lost someone to the disease of addiction. Not one nurse wrote anything down about that, because I was all over this.
Sure.
And told the surgeon too. Nothing written down. Upon discharge, when he said, we're going to send him home with some pain meds, and again I said that, and he goes, wait, Linda. If he takes it as directed, he'll be fine. 4 Percocet a day for 15 days, Jeff. Where would we have been?
Right.
Where would we have been?
Yeah.
And I'm going to educate somebody who's the pain management doctor?
Right, right.
Like, that was absolutely insane to me.
And most people, look, people defer to doctors. They say, well, I don't.
Of course.
It doesn't seem right, but I guess he knows what he's talking about.
Because
right?
you're going to do what the doctor says, because they certainly know more than I do.
Yep.
So if I didn't have the education that I had, because my son, 2 days later, upon withdrawing from everything that they had him on in the hospital, was in withdrawal.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
Full-blown,
absolutely.
you know, sweating, shaking, twitching, all of those things. And he didn't take the Percocet.
Right.
So, I shudder to think that if I wasn't educated, that if I wasn't up on what was going to happen with him, where would we have been? We would have been off to the races again.
Yeah, you know, the overprescribing continues to be an issue. You know, I think physicians feel a lot of pressure, and they'll all tell you, patients that aren't given meds when they leave tend to call back. They tend to be in pain. They tend to, be a pain in the neck.
Yeah.
And so I think if most of them saw the other side of this and said, and kind of learned about, so here's how this thing works, here's how it impacts families, they might be a little bit reluctant, but they haven't taken the time to see the other side of this. They've taken a shortcut.
But we have a pain threshold here. When I was little, you were lucky to get an aspirin. You really were. Your bone could be hanging out of your leg and you'd be fine. Right. That's what we were told. And I didn't think anything else other than that. But why do we have to go from here to the highest level? Right. There's an awful lot of drugs in between.
Absolutely.
That should be tried the least amount to see if that brings you
and then increase it over time.
And then go up from there.
Right. Look, nobody should live in pain.
No, no one should live in pain. Nobody's saying that at all. But there's, pain also provides a very healthy symptom for you.
Absolutely.
So if I hurt my knee and I feel no pain, I'm going to continue doing the activities that I'm going to do, and I'm going to cause myself much more damage.
That's right. As
opposed to saying, oh, that still is really sore, I'm going to pull back.
And as we all get older, we're going to experience pain, right? Things happen. It's
Things
part
happen.
of life.
It's part of life. It's how you deal with them then. Right. You have to change your activities of daily living. That's right. We'll be right back after this message.
My name is Dr. Robert Brevard. I'm here for Multi-Medicine in Westbury, New York. We're located at 1065 Old Country Road, Suite 214. Been here for about 15 years. The practice has medical doctors, physical therapists, chiropractors, acupuncturists. We also do pain management, and we have orthopedists on staff. Here at Advanced Multi-Medicine Rehabilitation, we've got physical therapists on staff who treat an array of conditions, from neck pain to back pain, shoulder pain. We treat carpal tunnel. We treat a lot of car accident patients, slip and falls. We treat patients with knee injuries, with ankle injuries. We have state-of-the-art equipment. We've been here for over 15 years. Vast array of diagnostic testing, from x-rays to EMGs. What is an EMG? It's a diagnostic test that allows a doctor to determine where the pinched nerve is. Cora is a physical therapist at Advanced Multi-Medicine and Rehabilitation. She's working on Stephanie, who was involved recently in an automobile accident. Stephanie has tight thoracic and cervical musculature. And Cora is doing some myofascial release work and some therapeutic stretching, doing it to help her with her pain. Vicky is also a patient here at Advanced Multi-Medicine and Rehabilitation. Vicky is now working her leg muscles, specifically her quadricep muscles, trying to strengthen them after an injury she sustained. If you find yourself in need of any type of physical therapy, please don't hesitate to call Advanced Multi-Medicine and Rehabilitation, located in Westbury, New York, in Suite 214. Phone number is 516-334-7000, or find us on our website at advancedmultimedicine.com.
Welcome back to Long Island in Crisis. So, Jeff, it's December 22nd.
Yeah. Where'd the year go?
Where'd the year go? I don't know. But, you know, we're coming up on really should be the best time of the year, and it's often the worst time of the year.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that people just need to take a step back and just be in the moment that you're at. And if you forgot a gift, you forgot a gift, it doesn't matter.
Yep.
It's not about the gift.
Yep.
Your family is the gift. And having lost my son, there's no gift in the world that could replace that ever.
Yeah.
So be in the moment and enjoy everything that could be gone at any moment in time, really.
It feels like we should end the show right there.
I know.
I know we still have time left, but it feels like a great end. Look, the gift you've given all of us is your willingness to share that story. You know, I've said to a lot of people, if I were in your shoes or Terry's shoes or somebody else's shoes, it'd be really hard to share that story. I've spoken at my son's school about his allergies, and when you talk about it personally, it's different. It's different.
It's different.
And so, you know, a big thanks to you for everything you do to get the word out and sharing that story, which I imagine at some points isn't all that easy.
It isn't. You know, and this year, we changed the Christmas tree. So I have so many ornaments that mean so much as children grow. And I haven't been able to take them out. And I'll share this because I took a step back, and I was quiet at Thanksgiving, but I took it, you know, the holidays are not easy. But I have other kids here today. I have to suck it up, and I have to show up.
Yep.
And I went upstairs, and I got down the most important ornaments, and nobody was home, and it tore me up, and it made me happy all in the same moment in time.
Absolutely.
And that's okay. But to see my son's face when he came home and said, "You got all those ornaments out?" And for him to relive those moments and remembering making something with my parents or doing all of this, or look at us, remember when we got this in Disney, Mom?
Right. Those memories.
Those memories. And the memories far outweigh the loss, really.
Absolutely.
And that's the way it has to be. So,
you know, the other thing you remind parents of, I think, is the need to talk to your kids, to have a real dialogue. So if folks out there are saying, so what could I do? What do my New Year's resolutions look like? You know, talk to your kids. It's not one talk. It's not one conversation. It's a series of conversations in which you create that safe space where you model good behavior, where you understand that not every conversation is going to go perfectly. God knows. And it's okay to stop it and start the conversation. You know, maybe this is the year when you lend a hand to that friend or family member who's been struggling, and you all kind of gossip about them behind their back, but nobody does anything.
Right.
You know, maybe this is the year to have that conversation, as difficult as it's going to be, to say to that person, look, it looks like you're having a hard time. Is there anything I can do to help? And be ready, because they're going to say no.
Right.
But the same way, you know, if you saw somebody who had fallen through the ice in a pond and you threw a life preserver to them and they knocked it away, you wouldn't just walk away and say, oh, that's on you.
That's on, right.
You throw the life preserver a few times, and maybe this is the year where you throw the life preserver to that person who is struggling. And look, maybe it's for most people out there, there's one or two behaviors that you can look at in your own life to say, you know, am I making the healthiest choices here? Are there other things that I can do?
Can I be a better example?
That's right.
How do I show up in life? How do I show up in life? You know, am I showing up? Always willing to drink, always willing to do something else. Right. You know, the golden rule, if everybody treated everyone else as they would want to be treated, we'd have a different space.
Absolutely.
You know, so talking to kids, talk to them about everything, and always give them a way out, right? We talk about if they're in a situation, have that text code.
Right.
You know,
You need a contingency plan.
you always,
especially
they
today.
need a way
Right.
out without being judged. So, Mom, if things aren't going right, can I call you and ask if Grandma got to the house yet? Or if I text, 911, you call me and say
Absolutely.
you have to come home, Grandma's here. Whatever it is, give them that way out. Give them that safe space. Because they don't always want to be where they're at.
That's right.
They
And,
don't
and look,
have to
most
be.
people don't. They just don't know how to get out.
They don't know how to get
Right.
out. It's very awkward.
Right.
You want to socially fit in and you can't. And don't give them the opportunity to be forced into a place where they don't want to be.
And, you've been a great example of this. The more parents and families can get involved in our community and speak up, the better off we're all going to be. Be the parent who says, the kids aren't going to drink in my basement. It's not
Right.
safer because they're doing it downstairs. Be the parent that goes to the school board meeting and says, look, what are you doing when it comes to substance abuse education? Red Ribbon Week is nice, but that's awareness. It's not prevention. It's not giving our kids skills. Be the parent who says to another parent, look, it looks like your kid is struggling. Is there anything that I can do to help? Or you might not know this, but guess what I found out last night?
Exactly. And don't be the parent that says, not my kid.
Right.
The school is not against you, and,
Right.
and neither is your community. So don't take that defensive route. Just say, really? I need to investigate this more. Don't be, because when I talk to school administrators, they're in a no-win situation.
Absolutely.
Parents want footage. They
Right.
want, they're worse than any defense lawyer there could be.
Well, they call me looking for lawyers. Parents will call me all the time saying, my kid got caught with drugs in school. Yeah, I could bring him in, but can you get me a good lawyer? No, I can't find you a lawyer. Take the $5,000 you'd otherwise spend on a lawyer and get your kid treatment. This is a golden opportunity. Go and kiss the principal, thank him for saving your kid's life, and get your kid off to treatment.
Absolutely. That's the consequence.
Right.
We can't fix every problem that they get themselves into.
Right.
That is the point of everything. Yeah. Your kid has a problem. How do you come out of this?
And this is the wake-up call. Thank God,
Right. Thank
something
God
worse didn't happen, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And our friend John Venza, 12 to 18 is 12 years old to 18 years old is his treatment facility.
Yeah.
How many kids there are addicted to pot?
Yeah, and look, we want to legalize it because it's harmless. We've got our president talking about it. So in many regards, we've got our work cut out for us.
Yeah.
But you've had it. We started off the show talking about the great guests, and you mentioned John, and I have the utmost respect for him. But you've had so many great guests on. Anthony Rizzuto, Kim Lauby, Millicent. And you've had some great, great guests.
And they're all part
Tatiana,
of this.
I think last week.
Yeah, of families in supportive treatment.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
FIST, get involved.
Yeah, lots of
involved in
opportunities to
there.
link up with families. And look, the families who have suffered a loss, like yourself, are the ones who have stepped up to the plate. It shouldn't take a loss to get families to step up and say, this is the #1 threat to our kids' safety and health and well-being. It's the #1 threat to our communities. We've got to band together and deal with it. 2016 should be the year we do that.
2016, we have to demand that death is not the treatment option for our youth.
This doesn't have to be a fatal disease.
No. And it can, I think, we see the young people in recovery. And if you ever saw them at their worst, you would never believe that they are who they are today.
Yeah.
And it can be, trouble is the gift. Jim Cusack wrote a book that I give out to people, and trouble is the gift. If you can get through that disease, there's nothing.
That's right.
You had the worst day of your, of your life. I want to take this opportunity to wish everyone a very Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, any holiday that's coming up. But really enjoy the season, enjoy the time with your families, because that is the real gift of the season. Don't stress about what you don't have to stress about. Everything goes on sale the day after Christmas anyway, right?
It does. That it does.
Enjoy the magic of the season, and that truly is the gift of being with family and friends. For me, anyway.
Absolutely. 100%.
Thank you, and we'll see you next week. And have a great holiday. Enjoy the time off. Good night.
hotel room, musty people.